Okay, first off, sorry about the fanboying. This is going to be a brief introduction to existentialism. So, first of all, I want to have something written on the board, which I'm turning towards it here in a bit. I want to show you a couple books which I would recommend you reading. First off would be this book, Existentialism, Dostoevsky to Sartre, and this is edited by Walter Kaufman. It just has a lot of really good readings in that kind of philosophy. Another one would be this one. This is an introduction to Existentialism by Olson. Another good one, just like a little secondary little preview, if you will. Let's see here. Jean-Paul Sartre, Existentialism and Human Emotions. There's another thing like this that has it's called Existentialism. Existentialism is a humanism, and this one has existential psychoanalysis and other good stuff in it. Another good one from Sartre, which is the main one you should read. This is kind of a hard read. This is Sartre's Being and Nothingness. It's thick and a pretty hard read, I would say. He's kind of all over the place, but it's definitely important to read. So, first of all, in this book, you have Heidegger's Was ist Metaphysic. That's a good one to read, but also I would recommend reading Heidegger's Being and Time, because that's mostly a hermeneutic phenomenology, but it does have some existential themes in it. Next we have Simone de Beauvoir's Ethics of Ambiguity, I and Thou by Martin Buber, The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. Also, I recommend The Stranger, along with some other stuff by Camus. A Kierkegaard anthology by Bertal. If you don't want to buy all those books by Kierkegaard and to have a good little set or selection, I recommend that. So I'm going to get to what all this stuff is. I was just recommending some things to you. So I'm going to turn you to the board. Hopefully you are able to see this, and if you can't, I apologize, and let me know. So, first of all, what is existentialism? So that's kind of something that follows the movement of phenomenology. And I want to do a video at some point as to showing how phenomenology is linked up with existentialism, because phenomenology is the stuff about angst and dread and despair and ambiguity, and this stuff is not really too much a part of the Husserlian phenomenology. It is a bit, though. So I want to do a video about that, but also one way that these two, that phenomenology and existentialism are linked up, is because Husserl had the whole formulation that essence precedes existence. We go self, then other, and we talk about the essences, and then existence. And then Heidegger came along, and Sartre did also, and flipped that whole thing around and said existence precedes essence, thus existentialism. So we're talking about our existence, for one, and talking about who we are and consciousness, really, and what characterizes our being. So I have concepts on this part and thinkers on the other hand. So I'll get to the thinkers here in a little, or to the concepts here in a bit. So first, the thinkers, I'm going to start with these. We have first Martin Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre. Heidegger's Being in Time is one. Heidegger's Was ist Metaphysic is a big one. In that essay, Heidegger talks about the nothing and how the nothing sort of seeps, if you will, into being. That's very existentialist, even though Heidegger claimed never to be of this thing, of this theory, or of this philosophy. The existentialists don't want to be lumped into anything. They are by this word, but these guys don't want to be lumped into anything, and they want to think of their stuff as not possible of being named, and they want to sort of supersede every kind of name that someone could put on it, but that didn't really work out too well because they got this name, existentialism. So Heidegger and Sartre talked about how we talk about essence, or we talk about existence first and then essence. Husserl had, in his phenomenology, how we talk about essence first and then existence, and how we go from self first and then we get out of our original sphere to other, where these guys claim that other is ontologically prior, and how we find ourselves amongst all that other. That's a very vague way of saying it, though. So I guess it's very difficult for me to give this brief intro because there's so much I could say. I just want to give you a little preface into your reading, if you will, and also those of you who do know about this and are well read in this, then I want you to critique me. So we have also the thinkers of Simone de Beauvoir, Karl Jaspers, Albert Camus, and Martin Buber, and then also we have Miguel de Unamuno and Rainer Maria Rilke. These two I don't really know too much about. I haven't really read too much into them, but I figured I would mention them since they are a part of this whole thing. Later, I would say, like, sort of in later existentialist trends, we have people like Emile Cioran and many others like that. This guy, he's very pessimistic about existence, and I've read him, and I think it's something that should be read, but it's not something I want to really talk about. But I just figured I'd mention him because he is a later figure of this. He's not a part of the big part of all this, though. So, to come to the concepts to hopefully help you understand what all of this stuff and what all these people are doing, I want to introduce the concept to you of, it's put in various different, first of all I should talk about the pre-existentialists, like Søren Kierkegaard. He was a Dutch thinker about a lot about religion and in various different things of philosophy, and he had a book called Fear and Trembling and a book called Sickness Unto Death. I need to read him a lot more, honestly. I need to really get more into him. The only book I've read by him is Sickness Unto Death. Nietzsche I haven't really read that much. I need to, but I just haven't. Nietzsche, these two were before this whole movement, and basically, when these people were around, they didn't know about this term yet. But then when these guys came around and this whole movement was born, they look back on these guys and say, well, these guys have a similar thing too. They have a similar thing going on, so they kind of called these guys existentialists, and they kind of are included in existentialist anthologies in writings, or in secondary writings. So, onto the concepts. We have angst, or dread, or despair. Heidegger talks about angst, in Being and Time. It's translated to either angst or dread. So first we have fear, and I talked about this yesterday in a video I made. Fear, or Furcht in German, where we see something that is threatening. It's when it's detrimental to us and it's within striking distance. That's actually Heidegger's terms. Fear, we see something fearsome and we are familiar with it and we know what it is that's causing our fear. Dread, or angst, on the other hand, we have similar kind of things going on here, but it's dread because we have no familiarity of what's causing it, and as that thing becomes detrimental or within striking distance, we have the issue of terror, where the angst, what's causing the angst, which we have no idea of, is within striking distance. So we have angst and we have dread, which are various types of translation of Heidegger's terms. Sartre uses terms like that as well. Despair is a term used by Kierkegaard, and that's another thing that I really need to get more into, because I haven't. I've read Sartre, Heidegger, de Beauvoir, Jaspers, and Camus, Buber, and Cioran, but I haven't really read too much. I've only read a little bit of Kierkegaard, no Kafka, and very little Nietzsche. But I have to mention them. Kafka was he was a novelist. He wasn't really writing philosophy. He was basically a novelist, or he wrote stories and they had theories in them, or the Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is by Kafka. That's a big one to read that gets somewhat connected to this movement. It has the whole thing about him being a bug. I've read parts of that, but not really a whole lot to really talk about it. Then we have, and I put these three in one because they are one thing, and Heidegger in Was ist Metaphysik talks about these two things, or Angst or Dread, whatever way it's translated from German. Angst is the way it is in German. Angst is an actual German word, Angst. Angst is an English word, but it's often translated as dread. So basically what Heidegger talks about in Was ist Metaphysik, or What is Metaphysics, is he talks about how the nothing kind of seeps into being, and the nothing mixes with being, and that causes these kind of things going on. I really need to revisit that essay, but you know, all these things I have so much stuff I need to read, and I could read so many things and never be done until I die. So now on to ambiguity and absurdity. These two terms, ambiguity, is of Simone de Beauvoir, in, of course, in this book, The Ethics of Ambiguity. I do have a video on this, a recent video on this. It's a little book. It's a really quick read, I guess, if you do have a good understanding of this stuff. Ambiguity. She talks about how we have bad faith, and it's either bad faith or it's self-deception. Self-deception. Those two terms are interchangeable. It's either bad faith or self-deception. I like the term self-deception because you understand what that is when you hear it. Bad faith, you don't really get it, and you don't really understand it from hearing the word unless you've been acquainted with it. When you hear the word self-deception, you kind of get a sense of what is. I mean, you have to read into it more, but when you hear the word, you get a little bit of a sense of it. So, ambiguity. De Beauvoir says that when we basically do our projects, we are thinking about our facticity, or our, first we have this term facticity, if I can find a place in the word to write it, facticity, and transcendence. These are two terms that I should have put over here. Facticity is our current situation. It's what we are concerned with. Heidegger talks about this. It's what we have concern with, our situation, and we do projects. De Beauvoir calls them projects. We do projects in order to move towards a transcendence, or a potentiality, or possibility, a possibility that could happen, and we move from our facticity to our transcendence through doing projects and trying to move towards that. That's the whole thing. That Sartre uses this, and so does de Beauvoir. Heidegger uses the term facticity, but I don't believe I've read him use this term. So, de Beauvoir, this is about ambiguity. She talks about how pretty much we do our projects in the world in order to do this whole formulation, in order to get towards our transcendence, to change our facticity, to move towards our transcendence. But the external weight of the world crushes that and weighs itself on that and interrupts that, really. So so we have, basically we try to do it to move towards this, and stuff happens, the common thing that we hear from people in the world: shit happens, or life happens, or that's life, when something doesn't go your way, or something happens that you didn't really want to happen. That's kind of what she's talking about. That isn't really a good way to describe it, though. Basically, it's the external. She calls it the external weight of the world crushing your spontaneous internal drive to do your projects and to do the things that you have concern over. And the weight of the world crushing that is gonna cause some problems with you. And then people don't always think of the world as being ambiguous, but they just keep on going in the world, trying to think that there's some kind of meaning or some kind of I guess truth in the world, or some kind of meaningful content, to where this ambiguity can't be so, to where this is always going to happen. But the truth is, according to her, in this world, this doesn't always work. You can't always, you should always try to do this, but it isn't always going to work. So she does talk about freedom, which I'll get to in a bit. So the ambiguity is that we have to accept this ambiguity of the world. And if we don't accept this ambiguity, then we're in bad faith. Bad faith, what that is almost like we are lying to ourselves, or we are looking in the mirror and fleeing from ourselves. And Sartre uses this term, and then de Beauvoir uses it as well. Sartre uses it. We have being for oneself and being for others. He also has the being for itself. We have this term, mauvaise foi, bad faith. This is when you are either entirely being for oneself or being for others, to where you are lying to yourself. Corey Anton had a great video on this. He has it somewhere where he used the term from some kind of African existentialist, like his name was Gordon, who had the example: don't treat me like I'm black, but don't forget that I'm black. So that's the kind of thing, how you're one thing and yet you're another. So it's kind of this ambiguous, contradictory thing. I hope I'm kind of explaining this right. Now, if you need more explanation on these, I have videos on this. I have a playlist which is called Existentialism in Life, where I have stuff about, other stuff like antinatalism in there, but a lot of it is mostly this word right here. So what is absurdity? This is the term of Albert Camus. So the myth of Sisyphus is that, to put it shortly, in this book, that you are the myth of Sisyphus is that he has his back and he's rolling the rock up the hill. There's a picture of it somewhere in this book, I thought, but it's a picture of the guy rolling a boulder up a hill, and he gets to the top, and then it rolls down, and he just keeps doing this, trying to move towards something better, trying to move towards having, something more than he already has. But the boulder keeps on rolling down, and he gets nowhere. So absurdity is the question, as he says, the question of philosophy is life worth living, or is suicide justified? So that's what that is, the question of the fact that the world is absurd in that way. So these terms are pretty related. So hopefully, and I'm going to explain Buber in a minute, which is kind of different. Jasper's I've read a little bit, but I don't really want to go too much into it here. Authenticity, I had a video about that of Heidegger yesterday. To put it without the Heideggerian terminology, you are either inauthentic or eigentlich, or you are inauthentic or uneigentlich. And to be authentic is to sort of be unique and not conform. And I guess Charles Taylor is the one who has this kind of way of thinking about it, is that you go your own way, but mostly, and you don't feel the pressure to do certain things just because of, because of the other of other people. So to be inauthentic is to be the opposite of that. But I prefer to explain it into Heideggerian terms, to where authenticity, or Eigentlichkeit, is to uncover and reveal your Dasein's being, to where you are sort of revealing one's own being, and you are revealing your own being, and thus you are not falling among the they, and you are sort of unique in that way. You are authentic in that you are uncovering your own being, whether for Heidegger, inauthenticity is falling and thrownness, to where you are drowning or absorbed into the they or the who, or the other, to where you are covering up your being, and that's the way Heidegger says that. And I have a video which I made yesterday, which is about Heidegger's way of talking about this. So, down to freedom for de Beauvoir, to be there is on ethics there, and the ethics that she has has to do with accepting this, and also being free in that you are accepting this. So that's a different way of saying it. Death relates to Heidegger as well as Sartre, and also de Beauvoir. Death, the issue with that is being towards death for Heidegger. That's one way of talking about it. Being towards death is that you are aware of it, and you are accepting that you will die one day, or that death is gonna come to you at some point. Other versus self. There's questions here among these thinkers as to whether self or other is prior. For Husserl, prior to this movement, self was prior, but for these guys, or well, most of them, at least these two, self is prior, and self is ontologically prior, and there's a lot of philosophy behind that, and talk about that. I am more tuned to what Heidegger says. I'm not as into Sartre, but what about Buber now? Buber has this book called I and Thou, or Ich und Du, which kind of talks about the I-it versus the I-thou. The I-it is the relation of being to where you are looking at other people as they are sources of info and its, basically, and you are looking at them as they are means to certain ends, to your own ends, basically. But the I-thou is the true relation of being, the true thing here, and it's the I-thou is where you treat them as a thou, as they are what they are, and sort of had this little ontological link between them as you share your whole being with them. Mostly, that's a bad way of explaining it. Now, I think I have a video about Buber somewhere, but it has three parts, and it's a really quick read, I would say. But if you think I've messed something up or left something out, please tell me below. I'd love to hear from you. I do this to learn for myself and for criticism from you. So please comment. Also if you have a question, also if you have a question, please also comment below. I'd love to hear from you. So whenever you comment, I get an email immediately, and if it's something constructive, then I will immediately respond if I'm not sleeping or in class or at work. Thank you.